So, what does it really take to be recognized as a saint? It's a journey that stretches across thousands of years, from the very birth of Christianity all the way to our modern world. And along the way, we find some truly incredible stories about what makes a life extraordinary. So let's dive in.
All right, let's start with a little riddle. What could possibly connect a humble fisherman, a wealthy Spanish nobleman, and a quiet Indian nun? I mean, on the surface, it seems like absolutely nothing, but they all share one profound, life-defining title.
And the answer is, of course, they're all saints. At its heart, the idea is pretty simple, but it's also incredibly demanding. It's a life defined by an extraordinary, unwavering faith and a deep, active commitment to serving other people. This is the foundation for everything we're going to talk about.
To really get this, we've got to go all the way back to the beginning with the first apostles. I'm talking about the original messengers, the ones who took a brand new faith and carried it out into the world, often paying the ultimate price for it.
And what's so incredible right away is the contrast between two of the biggest figures of the early church. You really couldn't have picked two more different guys. On one hand, you've got Peter, a simple fisherman from Galilee, who was chosen to be the rock on which the church was built. And then you have Paul. He wasn't just a skeptic, he was an enemy. He actively persecuted Christians until he had this blinding vision on the road to Damascus. I mean, talk about a complete 180. It's an unbelievable transformation.
But for all their differences, their stories end in the exact same powerful way. Both of them ended up in Rome, and both were martyred under the Emperor Nero. Peter was crucified, and get this, at his own request, he was crucified upside down because he didn't feel worthy to die the same way as Jesus, and Paul was beheaded. Their willingness to die for what they believed in is what really cemented their legacies as these foundational pillars of the faith.
And you have to remember, this wasn't just a local thing. This movement went global, right from the get-go. Peter's own brother, Andrew, took the message all through Greece, where he was eventually martyred on that X-shaped cross that is now named after him. And meanwhile, you have Thomas, who traveled all the way to southern India in 52 AD and founded a church that's still there today. Then there's Jude, who pushed into Persia, earning the title of the patron saint of impossible causes, which, makes sense given the sheer courage that took.
Okay, so that's one path, traveling the world, spreading a message. But that's not the only path to sainthood. There's another way, one that's about a deep internal devotion, a spiritual journey that inspires people through prayer, writing, and contemplation.
And a perfect example of this? Saint Ignatius of Loyola. Now, he wasn't a fisherman. He was born into a noble, wealthy family in Spain, the youngest of 13 kids. So his path wasn't about converting nations, but about converting the self.
And just listen to this prayer. It tells you everything you need to know about his mindset. Give me thy love and thy grace, for this is sufficient for me. He's basically saying, you can have everything else. It's this radical act of surrender, trading all his worldly power and his intellect for something he saw as infinitely more important. For Ignatius, faith wasn't just a part of his life, it was everything.
Now let's hop over to a totally different story of inner faith, that of Saint Alfonsa from Kerala, India. Her life was, it was completely different. She wasn't born into nobility. In fact, her childhood was really tough. After her mother died, she was raised by a super strict aunt, and her only real escape came from the stories of saints that her grandmother would tell her.
Her life was so short but so profound. She joined a convent, dedicating her life to prayer and teaching. And then, after she died at just 35 years old, something incredible started happening. The very same school children she had taught began reporting miracles at her tomb, and that's what eventually led to her becoming the very first woman from India to be canonized as a saint.
Okay, so that brings us closer to our own time. How does this idea of sainthood even work in the 20th century, a world with global media and huge social challenges? Well, the path kind of shifts again, this time toward faith in direct, tangible action.
And when you think of a modern saint, who is the first person that comes to mind? For a lot of us, it's got to be Mother Teresa. Her whole life was about service. But if you had to pick one moment that captured her global impact, it'd have to be 1979. That's the year the entire world officially recognized what she was doing, awarding her the Nobel Peace Prize for her work with the poorest of the poor.
And this quote from her, wow, it just says it all, doesn't it? This wasn't a mission that was contained by borders. She was Albanian by blood, an Indian citizen, but her calling, as she put it, belonged to the entire world.
Now here's another really fascinating modern figure, Pier Giorgio Frassati. A lot like St. Ignatius, He came from a very wealthy and influential Italian family. He could have had a life of total comfort, but instead, he made this radical choice to throw himself into a life of service.
And this is the key part. He didn't just write checks. He got his hands dirty. He joined service groups when he was just a teenager. He spent his free time caring for the sick and for orphans and helping soldiers who were returning from World War I. His faith was something he lived out every single day on the streets with the people who needed him the most.
And get this, his story is still being written. After he died at just 24, his legacy of charity just kept growing and growing, and he's going to be officially recognized as a saint in 2025. That makes him one of the newest saints for the 21st century. So, we've seen apostles facing down emperors, mystics deep in prayer, and modern social workers on the streets. They're all so different. So what's the one common thread that ties all of these incredibly diverse lives together?
Well, when you really break it down, you can kind of group them into three main paths. First, you've got the messengers, people like Peter and Paul, who were defined by their relentless preaching. Then you have the path of inner faith, which you see in Ignatius and Alfonso, focused entirely on personal devotion. And finally, there's the path of modern service, embodied by Mother Teresa and Pier Giorgio, who directly served those who were suffering. Three completely different ways to live a life of faith.
And that's it. That's the secret sauce. In the end, it doesn't matter if they lived 2,000 years ago or died in the 20th century. It doesn't matter if they were preachers or nuns, rich or poor. Every one of their lives boiled down to the same two things: profound sacrifice and unwavering service to other people.
Ultimately, these stories aren't just about history, they're about legacy. They show us what it looks like to live a life that's so dedicated to something beyond yourself that it echoes for centuries. And it kind of leaves us with a big question to think about. In our world today, what truly makes a life extraordinary?